Hi, today what I want to talk about is more spoken language features. So in the previous video, which you can look up there, I've spoken about some of the aspects you should be looking for in spoken transcripts when you're doing your analysis, and today I want to add a few more to that list. So first of all, topic shifts. This is where the speakers move from one topic to another. So when you're looking at your transcript, you need to mark these key points in the spoken discourse. Now there'll be a speaker who introduces the topic. They may remain the dominant speaker throughout. Sometimes you'll have a new speaker come in, and if they will try to introduce a new topic, but they might not be successful, so the dominant topic then continues. Or the topic may shift. So the speaker who introduces the new topic is known as the dominant speaker in that moment. So speakers also can change roles. They may be the dominant speaker, then the other speaker may take over, then they may take it back, or they may remain the dominant speaker throughout. Although new topics appear to be random in a conversation, the interlocutors always intend to introduce their topic in a way though that appears natural. It's something that we learn, so we're not really observant or aware of it as it's happening. So in an informal conversation, the main topic may not necessarily be that which is discussed first. It may come later in the conversation. So it's a matter of being very attentive when you're doing your analysis to pick up what is the main topic of this conversation. Now, the other thing to look for are adjacency pairs. They are recognizable patterns that follow one another. They're things that you would expect to follow. Okay, they can be contributed by different speakers in different ways, but they're always connected in a logical pattern. So to conform to that recognizable pattern, it'll be something that's familiar to your ear, or if you're reading the spoken transcript, something that will be familiar on that transcript. So for instance, I've got some examples here on the slide which says, can I sit here? And the answer would be, of course. You'd expect that. Or no, you can't. Do your homework in a minute, don't nag. So they're called adjacency pairs. So they're phrases that follow one after the other, and they'd be phrases that you would expect, sort of the normal question, answer, or statement and response. The other aspect of a spoken transcript that you must comment on, especially if you've got two or more interlocutors, is turn taking. Now, this is something that we naturally do. It's something that we do from the time we start speaking. So we learn when it's our turn to speak, when it's our turn to remain silent, when to jump in, when not to. And we're very adept at also manipulating turns, making sure that we do get a say or we can speak what's on our mind. So these transitions usually happen very smoothly. We know that when if you look at those prosodic features, when someone lowers down at the end of a sentence, we know it's our turn to speak. We take these turns though almost instinctively, but of course when you're analysing a transcript, you need to take a note of this and what's happening in these moments and how people know it's their turn to speak. Also the emotion or the topic or the argument. Now, although it is a natural process, overlapping may occur. This is usually when the conversation becomes excited or heated, angry or in an argument, or with people who are very familiar with each other. But it won't last long. Very rarely does it last long, that two people will just be continually speaking. They'll be starting to speak at each other rather than to each other. And our knowledge of adjacency pairs, which we just spoke about, really helps us to know when it's our turn to speak, when it's our turn to respond. Also, having a really good knowledge of grammar and also those non-verbal cues from the other speaker are all indicators. So we know that at the end of a sentence, especially as the voice drops, then it's then our turn to respond. So what also to take into account when we're analysing spoken transcripts, it's the same as with written, is that communication goes beyond the words that are spoken. So this is really important. It's not good enough just to comment on prosodic features or comment on the obvious features in the script. We also have to go beyond that. So we go beyond the simple communication, beyond those what's visible to us on the page, And we know that language is used for a variety of functions. So this is where function and social purpose becomes very important. So we know language can be used to entertain, to inform, to engage, to persuade, etc., to convey abstract ideas that then shape our own perspective. So one's face need is a sense of their social value, and it's the social value they're experiencing during this exchange. So just to review, there are two types of face needs: positive face needs and negative face needs. Now, our positive face need is our need to be included, need to feel part of a group, need to be accepted and liked by others. Our negative face needs describes our sense of autonomy and independence, that we don't like our freedom and our independence infringed upon. If you're using Kate Burridge's book as a textbook, you could review pages 8 to 10. There's also a lovely, transcript, mother and son cooking transcript that's contained in the workbook, which accompanies that text if you're using that. So language choices and strategies are frequently based on addressing the face needs of ourselves and others. Might be a nice little practice question that you could apply to have a go at to make sure that you really understand what we've covered so far. Now, audience. You always need to, of course, take note of the audience. Who's the audience? Two people are speaking and others are listening around them. Then we'd have the person who's being addressed as the primary. There'd be a secondary audience and, of course, a tertiary audience, all of you reading that transcript. So you need to make a comment on the audience. Don't just stick with the obvious. Again, think about it. If it's a broadcast, there's going to be people listening. There'll be people concurrent, so there'll be people present when a broadcast is happening. But then if that broadcast is recorded, people well into the future could also become an audience for this particular talk, this speech. The other thing to take notice of is openings. Openings and closings. We'll talk about closings in a minute, but openings. These are very distinctive features. Now, if you've got two people with equal authority, social equals, it might just be a neutral starting point. Hey, did you hear what happened here, etc. Or did you see what happened? Or were you in class today when this happened? This can then lead to a self-related comment which focuses on the speaker. Yeah, I was there. I saw that. Could you believe it? Did you see, Jeanette's face when this happened? Or an other related comment which focuses on the listener. So often you'll see vocatives, and these can be very helpful to personalize the encounter. So, hey mate, for instance, would be a vocative. You would need to comment that, and you use your meta-language term, vocative, to comment on how a conversation opens. Now, of course, we've got openings, we've also got closings, and these will draw the exchange, the conversation to a conclusion. These sum up the exchanges that have happened, that have occurred. These can consist of self and other related comments, but also there are sometimes neutral tokens which are not evidently focused on one or the other, on self or the other. And closings can be repeated, especially if you have trouble bringing the conversation to an end. If you've ever been on a telephone call and you need to go, someone might bring up a new topic or try and engage you further on in conversation, not wanting to end the call. The other thing to look for are speaker moves. So framing, opens and closings create an overall structure to the conversation. So you look at how the whole conversation is framed in its entirety. There'll be the initiating topic and how that's established. You'll then be focusing on the comments which specify the direction or how the topic's going to be developed, how it will unfold. There'll be also, support, follow-up, which encourages the topic to continue. That often happens. It's not very often that someone would introduce a topic and then there's just nothing, and someone just talks about something completely different. That would be highly rude, also unusual. And there's also, though, the challenging or the interrupting the topic, which introduces a new topic but without mutual agreement. So look for it. At times, a new topic will be introduced and it will be clear that both speakers want to continue speaking about this. Other times, though, it may be a disruption. Need to take a note of that in the transcripts, make a comment on it about what it does to the relationship, what it does does to the audience, you know, why is it being used, what's happening with the role of speakers in that. Of course, there are your prosodic features. Now, most of these, you know, they're probably the thing that most students comment on because the legend's always included on the page, but you shouldn't just limit yourself to these. And what you should do is link them to either context, register, audience, the mode, the purpose, or the function. So function in speech, these prosodic features will indicate to you when to pause, when to stop, when the conversation goes fast, goes slow. So they act as verbal punctuation. They will divide up the spoken utterances into much smaller units, and so that helps with the understanding of the listener can follow what the speaker's saying. And detecting them does take a lot of expertise if you haven't got the written transcript in front of you. So when you are listening and you want to then transcribe a conversation, you really need to be listening carefully to see what prosodic features that you put in, so that you can then show the tone, the volume, the speed, etc. of the conversation that you are putting into written form. Now, hedging is something else that is used often in conversations, especially if they might be a bit delicate or a bit sensitive, or the one speaker might not know how the other speaker will react. So it's a word or phrase in a sentence that's used to make the point somewhat ambiguous. There's a bit of indecisiveness there. It's being cautious. You don't want to inflame someone. You don't want to anger someone. You don't want to accuse someone. You don't want to offend them. So, you know, you might get a police officer with someone they're arresting, or you might get a teacher and a student, or a parent and a child. And so a hedge will be used. And I've got an example here on the slide. There seems to be a problem here. Can we discuss it? Rather than going up and saying, this is a problem and here's what we're going to do about it. So hedging has a lot to do with face needs as well. So when you're going to talk about hedging, talk about too how it's addressing the positive and negative face. Now there's also shortenings. Of course, this is used in casual conversation. That's losing a part of a word. So approximately becomes approx, nothing, nothing. And it's always in casual and informal speech. And it can escalate in how often it's used if the speech is particularly excited or agitated or rapid. Now the other prosodic feature, of course, to look at is intonation, and you all know the symbols for intonation there. And look for patterning. Don't just say, oh, there's emphasis at the beginning of the word. Look for patterns in the conversation. So look for all of the intonation symbols. Try to see how if there's a pattern to the way one speaker is speaking which differs from another. Don't just settle with making a comment. So anything you observe on the page is not good enough to comment on. If you're just making an observation that anyone who have never studied English language can make, then you haven't analysed. You've just made an observation. That's not going to get you assessment points. So make sure that you're commenting as an expert on the English language. So by varying intonation, speakers can convey moods, attitudes, such as excitement, pleasure, surprise, joy, etc. That's what you need to be saying. You need to say, not only observe the intonation, but say what it's doing, what it's revealing about the speaker and the conversation. So there's a different way. You can say no in an indignant way, or you can say no in a doubtful way. One is a matter of fact, the other is I don't think so. So intonation has both functional and semantic uses. So if you're commenting on intonation, you comment on its function and also the semantics of it. Okay, what is it implying? It can also be used to mark grammatical boundaries, as you know, and also can structure turns in the conversation. So those 4 points are things that you could comment on when you're observing intonation in the text. You need to make sure that you are showing your expert analysis skills. Same with pitch. It's not good enough just to comment on the pitch, how something's said. So how something's said, there's high pitch, low pitch, and everywhere in between. These will be marked on transcripts, as you know. There's nice symbols there that indicate high, mid, and low. Now, changes in pitch are linked to meaning. and to the speaker's relationship to the topic. So it might indicate enthusiasm, or it might, a lower pitch might be something that's secretive or underhanded. What you need to do, again, don't just observe it's there, but look how it links to meaning. What is it showing about the meaning of the conversation of the speaker? There's also stress. Now, there's stressed and unstressed words in the English language. This is directly linked to the rhythm of the conversation. Stress can be used to mark a word of importance. And if stress changes, this can change the meaning being conveyed. So there's three things that you could comment on if you're picking up the stress and noting the stress marks in a transcript. I made ice cream focuses on the made, not the ate or bought. I made ice cream focuses on I made it, and I made ice cream focuses on the ice cream and not another type of food. So it's really important that you look for stress and say, how does stress, just like those other prosodic features, how does it change the meaning? What is happening here? What is the speaker emphasizing? What meaning are they trying to convey to the listener or to the audience? Again, volume and pace. So again, it can be loud, it can be soft, increasing, decreasing. Pace can be fast, slow, faster, slower. And again, it influences meaning. So it reflects the relative importance of what the speakers are saying. That's what you need to comment on. So when you're going to comment on volume and pace, you need to go that extra step and say, how is this influencing the meaning of what's being said? How is it highlighting importance of what's being said? What is being highlighted? Tone. So tone's role is to really organize the discourse. So it's an organizational tool, and it's directed to the listener to pay attention to the structure of the utterance, the cause elements, or perhaps to new information. So how something is said, the cause elements in that conversation, or it could indicate new information. So when you're commenting about tone, again, don't just say the tone in line 15. This word, the tone changes. Say why, what's happening, why is the speaker altering their tone? So then this leads us to pauses and rhythm, and of course there's informal and formal. In informal speech, it's acceptable in spoken discourse where the manner is informal to have a rhythm or to pause. You might pause for dramatic effect, you might pause to collect your thoughts, etc. They can make the pauses will make the speech, the rhythm of the speech, uneven, and that could indicate then a hesitancy, or it could indicate that somebody is struggling to continue in the conversation. Whatever it is, again, it's not good enough just to observe that it's there. You need to say what it's doing. In formal conversation, where the speech is formal, or the person is giving a speech in a formal context, pauses are usually used for dramatic effect, and the rhythm will be far more regular than in an informal exchange. So there are all different types of pauses, and I've got some listed here on the slide. There's voiceless hesitations, there's voiced pauses, word searching. All of these create pauses. They can be intentional. Okay, so if it's especially in a planned speech, a lot of the time this will be intentional. Other times it'll be unintentional. Generally that will be in an informal dialogue. So the pause symbol in transcripts can also indicate the end of a sentence. A longer pause could be somebody trying to collect their thoughts. There's also filled pauses. Now these are voiced hesitations, and this is your 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 ah. And depending on the speaker, they may be more numerous than for other speakers. I've just used it now. As I go on to the next point, can indicate another point. The person's thinking about what they're doing in their conversation. Generally, these are not conscious. They could be, but generally they're not. So vocal effects and paralinguistics. Now, you'd think that coughing, because it makes a noise is not a paralinguistic, but it is. So these vocal effects, paralinguistics, gestures, posture, paralinguistics, coughing, giggling, clearing the throat, these are all paralinguistic techniques. They can be used again to think about what you're saying, to pause, perhaps to make the conversation slow down if it's getting too rapid or too heated. It's to reinforce. So all of these gestures you need to make a comment on. And again, we go back to meaning. They can either reinforce what's being said, or they sometimes too can contradict the meaning. So non-fluency features distinguish between written and spoken language. In the more formal speaking, less hesitancy, simultaneous speech, could have a slip of the tongue. Evidence of non-fluency, though, are often not noted. So we generally don't focus in on them too much. They might be there, but it doesn't alter what we are hearing and what we are understanding, unless they are completely extended.